I wait until the beginning. It's my home, I use something, but I don't know.
All right, we will call the meeting to order. It was Cody Point Library Board, Wednesday, February 14th, 2024, 6:34 p.m. Any comments from observers?
There are none.
There are none. Thanks. All right, we'll move on to the minutes. We have minutes from January 10th, 2024. Any edits, comments, additions from board members? If not, can I have a motion to approve minutes? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Directors report.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good to see you. So the building projects that we have in motion right now are all going smoothly. The third floor renovation is really coming together. They're even starting carpeting tomorrow on one end of the floor, so they'll make their way down. So it's looking really great. The chiller replacement project is also progressing well. Most of it is completed actually, and they'll come back later in March to turn everything on and test it to see if everything works properly. So the design discussions on the patio are continuing. We have a lot more clarity on what we are doing with the audiovisual elements of the project, and then we're also due to talk more about the lighting aspects. So we should be on schedule for, we are on schedule for going out to bid and then bringing the bids proposals to the board. I mentioned Black History Month in February. We have a number of events that I provided the link there. We also have some lists on our website. We have some book displays. So look for all of that information. There's a little bit on our website as well to make sure people see that information. Let's see, we had a great staff day Monday, and so we had a lot of fun. I don't recall, I don't have the exact number of how many staff we had, but later on I'll pull up a group picture. I can show you how many people were. It was a big crowd. We had a lot of fun. And there were a lot of smiles, laughter, and a lot of learning that day as well. So, Leah, who is not here tonight, did a great job with her staff. Isela, our training and development coordinator, I want to give them some acknowledgement too, and thanks for all their hard work. The art committee has been meeting regularly actually for the past few months, and probably every 2 weeks, just to kind of have a little more, build up a little momentum on some of the topics that we talked about when the board approved the policy last year. So we're on the path to having some type of recommendation at some point to the board, some updates on artwork that we are thinking to sell at the accession from our collection that we don't really anticipate using in public display anymore. And also we're simultaneously thinking about ways in which we can purchase and find new art and really build some programming around it, like we had discussed. So we still welcome a board participant in that committee work, or it could be multiple board members, but remember, if it's more than two, then that's officially a subcommittee. So which is fine, we can do that too, but please let me know if any of you are interested. We normally meet in weekday mornings, like Wednesday mornings, so it might be difficult for you to go to work. Please let me know if you want more updates about that. I joined the Turning Point board as one of their board members recently, and looking forward to that. Carolyn, my predecessor, had been on the board for many years, and I spoke with her, and she really recommended that I say yes to that opportunity, and so I think it will provide me an insight that I perhaps don't have right now, really a more deeper insight to the mental health concerns and challenges and work that's being done in the community. And also it's a way for me to link the library with that overall work and those efforts in the community. So I'm excited about that new role. We've also been meeting with the clergy forum. So I'm not sure if the board is familiar. There is a local Skokie clergy forum, a multi-faith group that meets regularly, and we have been in contact with them over the years, and we are trying to establish more of a connection with those members and their faith communities, because we feel like there's that's entry into some different communities that may not be using the library, may not understand what we can offer as much. So it's a large representation of the community as well in Skokie. So we hosted one of their meetings last week and had a conversation about the moral courage framework that we learned about last year and the year before. So nothing is kind of solidified there, but we're continuing our conversations.
Richard, can you share more about the moral courage?
Yeah, moral courage is it's one of those frameworks that encourages like a way for people to talk to one another. Basically, that's essentially like just having dialogue without kind of winning an argument or debate, but just sharing and being listening to others, and so that's really at the heart of it, what it is. So it's not kind of like groundbreaking, but it's just a simple way to practically like experience that. So we'll see if something comes together along those lines. But even if it doesn't, we're still interested in working with the clergy forum on other initiatives. So we've been reaching out to some faith communities and churches and mosques and synagogues, et cetera, to engage more.
Richard, how would Annabelle's role as moral courage mentor work here in the library?
She went through special training. It took about several months of training where she learned how to teach basically moral courage, the framework. So there's different workshops that she can lead for staff or community members, or I went through one of her practice kind of, I can't remember what the word she used, but for her to complete her certification, she had to give a little workshop to a handful of staff members and went through it. So it's a workshop setting, kind of like a 2 to 3 hour workshop setting. So she's certified now to deliver that content. Basically, she has permission to. But we're very much in the beginning stages of like figuring out what that might look like here. So yeah, I mean the rest is self-explanatory here, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Congratulations on being on the board of Turning Point. I think that's really important work, and I think it's a really important synergy with the library, that very important organization in our community.
Yeah.
I actually referred somebody to them last night who was somebody who had a person in crisis, and I thought how lucky we are to have such a institution of that caliber, right, in our community.
Exactly, that's how I feel. I mean, we're very fortunate to have them right down, 5 minutes from here.
Right.
Our staff are aware of their services and refer our patrons to Turning Point all the time. And Rainey, the CEO of Turning Point, has been a long time supporter and partner of the library. So she was involved in the early days with the Skokie Welcomes Everyone initiative, and also the community seed cohort program. So yeah, she's been a friend of the library. So.
Questions for Richard? All right, then move on to the approval of disbursement report, pages 5 through 12. Questions, comments?
I had a question. Item 6020, the tax appeal. So is that what it seems like it's about? Like the library actually has to appeal?
No,
Who's appealing?
so this is a bill that we'll get regularly every year. This is a cooperative of government units, taxing bodies, basically. Like, so the park district, the school districts, us, to come together and collectively respond to what the appeals that, property tax owners have in Skokie.
Okay.
So because, when someone appeals, they're appealing to simultaneously a portion of the library, their local school district, the park district, the village. We all work together, and basically those are attorney fees essentially, and it saved us, it's more efficient and, saved us a little bit more money in terms of responding.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but then Allison has been in contact with the group and the representative, the coordinator of that group, and they used to meet regularly, but I think since COVID, they've been just working more on it.
Mhm.
But I'm sure the meetings will start back up or something. I used to attend it.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions?
I had a question on this 6120. The membership for Calm, I remember the discussion when we did that. Just wondering if we're finding that memberships like these, the utilization of them.
Yeah. We have been looking at that because I remember that you had asked that question when we first started, and we have definitely seen an increase in usage and continued usage of the app. I think that it's actually increased because more recently, because we really started helping staff members make sure that they know how to connect their account to be able to use for by family members and others. And I think you can have 5 people use your account and 5 people. So yeah, the usage has gone up and the interest has gone up. And so, and when we polled the staff to see if, do you use it? Do you want us to keep it? Well, we heard back from a lot of people saying, please, I really appreciate this app. Don't get rid of it. So yeah.
No other questions? Can I get a motion to approve the disbursement report?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor? We have to do it individually. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Shavna,
Yes.
Mira,
Yes.
Ella.
Yes.
And yes, that passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Move on to approval of chiller replacement payout number 4 on page 13. Let's do these individually. First, we'll do payout number 4, then we'll do 5. So page 13 is payout number 4. Any questions, comments? If not, motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All right, Mary,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Shavna,
Yes.
Mira,
Yes.
Ella.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Then payout number 5 on page 16. Same, any questions? If not, motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All right, individually, change it up, Ella.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Amanda.
Yeah.
Mary.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very good. On to the balance sheet for 9 months, page 36. Richard, you want to?
Yeah, sure.
About that.
This is really the work Allison prepared as our finance manager. So at this time of the year, especially for the new board members, this is the time of the year where we near the end of the fiscal year, we start giving the board an indication of where we are projected to finish with our current fiscal year spending and our revenue. So the big thing to note here is everything looks normal. And the taxes for that second line, the spring property tax revenue, you'll see that it's under by 7 million is because we haven't received that money yet. And starting in March, we'll start having that money flow in, I think, Cook County, and that should all be fully received. I anticipate that being the case. And so as far as expenditures, the same thing. We have 3 months left of spending, obviously, so that will factor in as over the next 3 months. And when the board sees the balance sheet after the end of April, when the fiscal year ends, you'll have a clear, unaudited picture of where we're ending the year and how much we may be able to transfer over into our reserve fund if that's what the board wants. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions if you have any. there's no approval or anything, it's just for information purposes.
And you're comfortable we're on budget?
Absolutely, absolutely, and we can look at the year-to-date, spending, but we're definitely on budget, on schedule.
Right, that'll be coming up.
Sure, yeah.
Richard, I'm not finding the page right now, but,
Page 36?
sorry, I'm on a different
Oh, okay.
question, if I may. Materials processing, it had like a minus 69.4% decrease in materials processing spending.
Are you talking about the projected year budget for next year?
Yes,
Oh,
so
okay.
maybe ahead of us here, but.
Yeah, I can talk about that if you want, but that's projections for the budget for next fiscal year.
Right.
So that's a draft, and it's we're taking some of that materials processing money out of that budget line because a lot of the materials processing that we pay for happens with the collection coming in. So like the vendors do it for us.
Okay.
And we have it arrive with some stickers and kind of labels on it. So we decided to like parse that out so it's cleaner when that's going to be folded into the physical line budget as opposed to the processing budget. The processing budget will be more specifically for the things that we pay for. So our supplies for labels, processing materials.
Got you. Okay.
I just have a question too about the other revenues. It's
Sure.
pretty interesting that we're, like, it's positive that we've taken in more revenue in that area than we anticipated. What is driving that? Are we getting just monetary donations from people or people
From-
using the
Which
copiers?
line?
We're, I don't
Oh,
know.
other revenue, literally.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, of course, the donation, I mean, that, there's probably kind of a big bucket. I just didn't know if more people were using copiers here, for example, than what we initially thought, like what's driving that increase?
Yeah, I honestly, I can't recall the specifics. Allison, do you recall what that might indicate? I put you on the spot there, but
No, I just think there's some donations that we've received, like we just had the Amy Bueller, they just gave us a significant donation, so little things like that, they all add up over 9 months.
Okay,
It's lost items too, though, as I recall. So donations, lost items, copier, those are all other
we can
income.
take a closer look at that.
Yeah, try to-
We'll provide an ongoing look at this over the next few months,
Yeah.
so we'll take a look at that.
yeah, the reason I'm asking is if it's something where it's donations, that can be really volatile, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's
you go
right,
up and
yeah.
down, but if we're seeing greater increases in things like copiers and other things that people are using regularly, I think it can help us to possibly budget for that a little bit more accurately.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, donations you really can't count on.
Exactly,
just,
but like if we start to see increases in copier use or printer use, that's good to know.
We always budget that kind of number very conservatively because
Sure.
you don't want to be reliant on it. So, and if it's like over, then it's a pleasant surprise as opposed to an issue.
And then the corporate replacement taxes
Yeah.
too. I can't remember, I know maybe like a month or two ago, we talked about that. Like in terms of projections for next year, like I can't remember what we said for that. Could you just refresh my
Yeah,
memory?
sure. So the corporate replacement taxes, I kind of give a little description of it. I won't get into the details in my projected fiscal year 25 memo. But it's almost impossible to predict exactly what we're going to receive because we don't really get an accurate projection of what we'll end up receiving until after the budget is approved. So we take, that's why in my memo for the projected budget later on in the agenda, I mentioned that we conservatively projected 500,000 for next year because we don't, it's been so strange, honestly, over the past few years that we don't want to. It's hard for me to believe that the numbers will be that high.
Okay.
Continuously.
Okay.
So this after the budget was passed for this current fiscal year, we budgeted at 400,000, and after the board approved that budget and with using that revenue projection for this current fiscal year, we found out that the number that we should be receiving during the course of the year is closer to like 950,000.
Wow.
So So that's why we have that budget surplus that I mentioned in
Yeah.
before the past, in our tax levy discussion, where we can use that surplus and kind of basically carry it over and count on it, using it for the next fiscal year as revenue essentially. But it's just I don't really trust that will be the case over the next several years. And I'd rather be, like I said about the other revenue line, I'd rather be conservative on that than overestimate what we might receive. So, in the past, it's never been that high, at like 900,000, whatever it used to be, like in the 400s or whatever. So we've had 2 years where it's been economic.
And Richard talks about that in the last paragraph on page 75,
Okay,
but I'd rather stick to the agenda right now, and that's,
yeah,
we jumped 30 pages, so.
all right, cool.
We'll get back to it. So,
Just one more question on this
On the
topic.
balance, yeah.
Yeah, so on page 38, looking at the financial statement through January of this year. So where it says lost item payments.
Mira, can you hang on one second? We're almost there.
Oh, sure.
So anything else on the balance sheet for the 9 months on page 36? We don't need to approve it, so then we can move on. All right, so the whole consent agenda from page 37 through 54. Mira, go ahead.
Sure. So same topic that Mary was talking about. The question I had was lost item payments. So the total there is 13,821. And I was just curious, what is the average within libraries of our size? Is that typical to have that amount in lost items every month?
That's not every month. The figure you're looking
Is
at,
a total, right? But
Yeah.
looking at what they are monthly, you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
see that. Is that sort of?
frankly, I don't know, but I can inquire and look at other libraries and ask,
Yeah, just curious.
ask around and I can find out. But I'm not sure if that's typical. I would imagine it's typical, of libraries our size with our circulation.
I mean, it seems pretty consistent if you look at from month to month, with a spike in October, but then sort of a consistent range.
Right. I could find out. Let's-
Sure. And I'm just curious if that's a new development or is that after we eliminated fees or, Laura, we had that conversation as a group many times and just curious if those things relate to each other at all or.
We can look at the year-to-year comparisons on that particular revenue stream, but my hunch, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that because of the way our borrowing policy is set up now, where after a certain point, your card gets essentially frozen until you return the items that you still have overdue. After repeated opportunities to renew, there's a big grace period there. So because the cards get frozen, essentially, I think there's more incentive for people to either claim that they've lost the items and pay for it and just open up their account again or find their item, right? So I'm wondering if our changes from the overdue fees being eliminated, that whole process, has kind of shaken things up. But I'm interested too. We'll look at the year-to-year comparison. Did you have any other?
It's been my impression that it's pretty steady in terms of lost items. Before we eliminated overdue fines, those were all lumped together in CERC amounts. So it may be a little hard to go back to when we had fines and parse out, oh, these were the lost items versus.
Yeah.
It may be possible, but as far as I know, since we eliminated fees, this has been fairly steady, that it's just, we circulate so many items, some of them get lost.
Yeah. How many years has it been now since we eliminated fees? Is it about 3 or so?
It was the March 2020 board meeting, if I'm remembering correctly, when we.
2020?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so 4 years.
So-
We have about 4 years of
And so it
data.
kind of didn't go into effect right away because we just ended up renewing things over and over because there was no way to return them. So I would say more like 3 years, maybe of valid data, maybe a little less because of.
But obviously these 3 years are different.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a sliver of our revenue,
Right.
obviously, so it's
Right.
not gonna change much in terms of the big picture, but it's an interesting question in terms of analyzing and understanding our patron behavior and use in the
Right.
collections. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions or comments about the consent agenda?
Can I highlight something?
Sure.
I wanted to just pause and there's an additional report here. You probably saw it, and I'm sure you saw the packet recognizing long-term staff, and Laura's here obviously, and Denise Rudek, our collection services, collection supervisor is here from our access services department, and Denise has been with us for 9 years, and Laura and Denise did a great job in putting this together. And do you mind just sharing a little bit about how it was? And I know you both had a good time doing it.
Yeah. Really enjoyable.
Yeah, I keep saying so all three people that we interviewed are in the department that I'm in, and I've learned so much about them during this process, and it was so much fun. And Laura and I have been, for lack of better, geeking out about everything that we read. Yeah, this is old board meeting minutes. We were looking through from 40 years ago. So I don't know, so these are,
Yeah, so we ended up, at first we thought, oh, we'll survey everybody and have them write down their answers, but then we decided it would be more personal to actually interview them. So we asked them things like, tell us how you came to work at the library, what's your favorite library memory, share a typical day in the life of your current role. What would people be surprised to know about the library from when you first started working here? What are some positive changes you've seen over your career here, either in the library or within the community? And everyone's role and work at the library has an impact on the community. How do you see your role and work as it relates to the library's mission, values, and strategic priorities? And that was tying it back to, this is one of our strategic priorities, is to recognize staff and to share the work that they do with each other and also with you. So yeah, it was a fascinating process interviewing them. And like Denise said, setting the stage for when they started to go back and look at, the size of the collection then and the budget and
yeah,
people that were in place.
So we started flipping through, we made a few copies of things that we really liked. There was the ad for when Mary Rademacher retired. So her resignation letter was in here about 40, so this was 1985, so just about 40 years ago. And then it was the ad for the next, so the job that Carolyn Anthony is receiving is in here. And then it had the floor plans of, when the building was 2 floors. And I'm in the access services department. We were a little jealous as a department when we looked and saw that department took up half the second floor. And it's just been really an amazing thing. Jessica Goodman, our digital collections librarian, shared with us, this is from 1979. So it's a little bit older than the staff that we interviewed, but it just has it's a program guide from that time and all the different things. It has pieces of information about the different departments in the library and what they do. And it actually calls out tech services, which is now access services, which is all 3 people are part of that department. And it talks about how behind the scenes their jobs are. And being a part of access services, and Colleen was part of our department at one point too. It really is such a behind the scenes department that a lot of people in the library don't know what we do and how much time we spend on things, all the care and work that goes into getting the collections ready. I supervise the team that selects the materials, but then we have the catalogers, we have acquisitions, the shelvers, all of these pieces that are part of our department. And I think there's a lot of people who don't know who Roseanne is, and she's worked here for 40 years. And so we're really hopeful that when we share these, we've shared these out with staff as well, that they get to know each other a little bit more. So we're very excited about that. I have these if people are interested in kind of
Visual aids.
Yeah.
So our plan going forward is to highlight a couple of people each month. So these were our 40-year people. Next month will be 30+ years. So we have 4 more people coming up who are 30+.
Wow.
We didn't quite reach the 40 mark yet. And we'll keep going. We have scads of people who've been here 20 years. Some have been here 10 years. Don't worry, we won't take you all the way to this person started yesterday.
We did a couple people start on Friday, so.
Right. But yeah, let us know if you have any questions, and hopefully you found this interesting, and let us know if there are other bits of it you'd like to see.
Hopefully you
I
enjoyed
really
reading
enjoyed
the
reading
bio.
I really loved it
I
so
have
much.
to say, I absolutely loved it. I learned roles that I didn't actually have a handle on, and it just not to make more work for anyone, but I think it would be such a cool social media project to link up. And were you thinking about this too? Like throwback,
Comfortable.
yeah, comfortable, but like even like, so, you know, the audio or video, clips of the interviews, if they are comfortable, if they're not, even just some of this archival material to just like on a weekly or monthly basis to just give people snippets of this, because it's like, it's Skokie gold. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just so fun and so illuminating to hear like the details of their stories and the roles that they play. It's just, I know everyone is feeling that, so.
And I think that a lot of the social media, if we look at some of the trends that, you know, the ones that get a lot of the views are a lot of things that highlight our library staff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Humanize the library.
yeah. Mhm. And it would be nice to see that highlighted if they're.
I have a question too, like, you know, when we walk into the library, there's that TV screen that shows like the map of the library. Do we have any other screens like that around the library? Because it'd be nice to have like circulating announcements about programming and things. And like something like this would be a really great candidate to even have cycling through there. Just to
Looking forward to
get.
seeing
I
you.
like to talk with Jane, CME.
Are there screens in other parts of the?
We have one near the Petty, outside the Petty.
Yeah.
We have one in the east vestibule as well as the west vestibule. We have one here on the second floor. We have a map. We use some of them for floor plans.
Yes, I've seen the floor plan. I don't know if I've seen ones that have like circulating announcements
The one with
or.
the entrances in the Petty has that.
And once again, that's if people are comfortable, you know, being in the spotlight.
Yeah.
I just thought that this
Right.
was so cool. I love reading these stories like, oh, I remember the card catalog and when the president was here to have a line. And I'm like, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
It's really great.
And it was interesting to note, all three of these employees started out as part-time employees, and you saw
Yeah.
Roseanne went to library school once she started working here. And so they came in as part-time and they found their home and they found their calling and they've stayed all this time in a variety of different roles. That's wonderful.
Really, I thought Laura and Denise also did a great job. And
Yeah.
there were others who contributed to the interviews and putting it all together, the CME team. So,
Yeah, we had a nice setup where, well, this time around it was me, I got the lucky part of, which I am not being sarcastic, I did get the lucky job of taking the notes during the interviews, and then we asked another staff person we thought they would be very comfortable with to ask the questions and have kind of like a running commentary going. And Jessica Goodman, who's our digital collections person, she did some of the interviews and she was able to then add the context because she knows our archives and she knows so much of these things. So she was able to help add in something. So her work on this has been just, so we're so glad to have it.
We have a great team.
Yeah.
sorry, next one.
Yeah.
Call it, yeah.
Yeah, it's really.
It's a new report, and you'll see that, for the remainder of the year, except for when we do the quarterly employee recognitions that you saw in January, we'll pause this and focus on. Mix it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really cool.
I want to call another positive thing I saw here. I like the call out in the report about having more evening time activities for people. As someone who has a full-time job and who would love to do more activities at the library, sometimes it can be kind of hard when I'm at work during the day. So I'm sure other people are the same. So I like seeing the inclusion of more evening activities. I think that's really, really great.
Amy is our public services director, obviously, and she's been working with a lot of staff to do more events. Thank you for those.
I have a quick question. Is this the appropriate library use policy? Is this part of this section?
No, that's
That's later?
yeah,
Oh, okay,
that's
sorry.
such a.
Sorry.
This is through page 54.
54, okay, sorry.
So any other comments on consent agenda, which is pages 37 through 54? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, this could be just voice vote.
Aye.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, page 55, approval of revised appropriate library use policy 55 through 65.
I'm gonna let Laura take this one. She took the lead on.
All right,
preparing this.
Laura, Educate us.
This wasn't quite as fun as interviewing staff, but it was actually kind of enjoyable to dig into these policies word for word and to work with, like I mentioned in the memo, all of these key staff who really, they use these policies day in and day out. And we went through them together word by word. We had multiple meetings and discussions, and it was just really interesting to see, you know, what is working, what's not, what needs to be tweaked, what do we need to tighten up a little bit. So as you can see in the memo, a lot of what we did was just kind of cleaning things up, changing titles, restructuring a little bit, rewording a little bit. Most of the appropriate or the behavior that's not appropriate is still the same. We've reordered it a little bit to emphasize the severity of some of the things on this list. And we wanted to combine the appropriate use policy with how we respond to it so that we have one place to point staff and patrons to, this is what happens when you violate the appropriate use policy. So we don't have a policy on a policy, which is what we had before. And then the supervision of children policy was written a long, long time ago when we thought about children in the library a little bit differently. You'll notice part of the crossed out part at the beginning was you can come to the library if you're going to read a book and do your homework. And then you're welcome here. That's obviously not how we approach things today. So we wanted to make sure that that was very clear in that revised policy. And then just, again, sort of clarifying and cleaning up, this is our expectation for how children will be supervised when they can be here unsupervised, and what will happen if there is someone here who can't be here unsupervised, what steps will we take? So that in a nutshell is what we've been working on, but I welcome any questions or clarifications that anybody might have.
I had two suggestions
Okay.
for amendments. One is, page 58, where you say the library, under staff response violations, the library use rule, the library reserves the right to inspect all bags when staff believes someone has stolen library materials or is in possession of weapons. I think that's too narrow. I can think of multiple examples of other reasons why you might want to check a bag, you know, in terms of people doing things from drug activities to spray paint to pornography that they're showing, you know, whatever it is that don't qualify there. So I would suggest, and I know you don't want to just say you can check it at any time. So would suggest that when staff believe there are issues of safety or illegal activity.
Yeah.
And then it's also just, because I had that highlighted too, just that we narrowed it into just bags. Right?
Right, you can see when you crossed out, you did have purses, backpacks.
Right.
Yeah,
So I don't know if
kind
it's
of,
another-
we're trying to make it a little more generic. So we weren't defining, you know, a briefcase versus a
Right.
fanny pack or, you know.
Can you say check your belongings instead of like a particular, I don't know if that's
It
also
would be
too vague.
coat even.
Yeah. Something like that.
And just to clarify, we don't routinely search anybody's
Right.
bags when they're
That's what
here.
The right to do. when you think of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
More where this comes into play is somebody walks out and the gate beeps and we say, oh, can you just double check and make sure that
Right.
everything got checked out? It's not really us going around looking for
Right.
bags or suspecting
We
people.
had somebody bring in a gun, so like
Right.
you brought in a rifle or whatever, not that that was a bad thing.
A rifle?
This was many years ago in the violent case.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, you know, that could be a gun in their pocket and they're
Yeah.
told about, so.
Yeah.
And they would say it's not in my bag, it's so no, you can't look, so to your point.
Mhm.
And did we have this checked over by?
Yes, our lawyer reviewed it. Yes.
So, I think I can just add one note about that too. It's very rare that we would be in a position to want to do anything like this. And if it's a serious enough issue like a weapon, most likely we would be bringing in the police to
Right.
assist us with that kind of action, you know, so we can definitely rework that sentence, you know, as you suggested. We can either, I think we get the gist of what you're saying.
Yeah.
and,
Make it broader.
Yeah.
Those days,
Yeah,
like safety instead of weapons.
yeah.
I'm curious though, legally, what right does any organization have to search someone's belongings? You know, so as you broaden it, I would still, of course, make sure that you know, run it by
Oh,
council.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
If we
just
change it, we
think-
can run it by
yeah.
them again. Yes.
Yeah, because what right do you have to search somebody's belongings? I mean, I guess them being here is them giving some kind of consent. I mean, so long as this is all in writing in advance, but I'd be curious to know what is the law? on
Yeah,
that?
we're a public building, so
Right,
not private.
yeah, that's true, right.
And my other suggestion, less radical, but just moving the sentence, on page 66,
Mhm.
this is under the children's section,
Mhm.
you say, library staff are not responsible for the care and supervision of visitors of any age, which I agree with, but that's in the children's section. You don't have that in the general section. In the general section on page 57, you have something about kids. So I would suggest you take the sentence from page 66, library staff are not responsible for the care and supervision of visitors of any age. And put it on page, additionally, you can put it on page 57 where you have the paragraph about children under age 8 must be supervised. You can leave it there because then it's in the general policy about any age as opposed to that being in the children's section.
Yeah, we initially considered doing a totally separate policy for individuals who need care. And felt that that really fell under the appropriate use policy. You know, that applies to every single person who walks in the door. It doesn't matter what your age is or anything else about you. So, yeah, we could,
Just repeat the sentence.
You
Yeah.
could either put that sentence in front of that children under age 8,
Yeah.
or we could just put it as a separate bullet point.
Either way, I
Mhm.
just think it's worth having in the general
Yeah.
section.
We
Yeah.
talked about that possibility.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Problem.
There's some other comments on policy from other board members?
Just a couple of questions. I know we had a patron that visited our board meeting several months ago, and she expressed concern about young people in the library running, screaming, and using language that she did not, you know, find acceptable and appropriate. So I'm curious, on page 57, do we feel that these bullet points would cover use of offensive language?
so we really use the first bullet point in here the most. Disruptive behavior affecting staff or patrons is prohibited. That covers
Okay.
so many different behaviors that happen in the library. If you are in any way disturbing someone else's ability to use our spaces, we're going to address that behavior. So that would fall under that category, and that's what we would point to.
The including but not limited to.
Right,
is
right.
The key.
Yes. Okay, and also on the top of the next page, we refer to the CCTV surveillance policy. And I'm just wondering, could you tell us more about that and how that works at the library?
Yeah, so that's a completely separate policy that outlines that we have cameras and that there are limitations to who can view that footage. It talks about how we will or will not release footage to, you know, people can't just come in and say, I want to see the footage from the computer lab the other day. So it just outlines how we collect that footage and who can access it and use it, how it's used.
That, I'm glad you brought that up because that policy is another policy that I think we will need to look at sometime this year, sooner rather than. Laura and I were just talking about it actually, recently about, just making sure we take a close look at all that again. And because it's been a while, I think 2016.
It's been a while. We've added more cameras
Right.
and things since then.
I think that's right. Obviously, it's very relevant to the times we're living
Mm-hmm.
in.
And times have changed too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or I just had a quick question about like, I was noticing written notice is not required for initial warning or exclusions for the remainder of the day. How do staff avoid like the potential, like, they said, he said, she said kind of thing? Like, is it being documented even in those instances, like internally?
Okay,
In those
yeah, I see
cases?
what you're asking.
Just in case, you know what I mean? Like, just in case someone does end up leaving and trying to come back and violating it immediately, like,
Mhm.
how is that then being documented?
Our safety team has internal communication procedures, and they also work very closely with our public facing staff, like our team, info services. So they are in constant communication
Okay,
about exactly that scenario that you mentioned. You know, I just gave this person a warning. You
right,
give the safety team a heads up and they know,
okay,
okay, something else happens. We're gonna move on.
got it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the section about disruptive behavior,
Mhm.
the and or provoking violence, is it possible to strike the provoking violence? I'm just a little concerned that victims of violence could be told they provoked the violence upon themselves. So is it possible to strike it or reword it? It was triggering for me to see provoking violence.
Okay.
Sometimes people are victims of violence and they say, well, it was provoked and it caused it. While I know that people can incite things at times, I just would err on the side of caution with that term, provoking violence.
Yeah, we can definitely go back and look at that.
I think we can strike that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it could just be fighting and threatening the safety of others.
Yeah, that's really the concern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Laura, I have a question.
Sure.
Taking photographs and or shooting videos for commercial purposes requires authorization. So if you have teens who are like doing TikTok videos of the library.
Yeah, that's not what we're going for here. This is more, you're coming to film a documentary, for example, you need to get permission from us. But not, you know, somebody's working on a school project and they need to film a little video in the studios or something like that. No.
Good question.
Mhm.
And then I just had also one, maybe this is like, I don't want to open up a whole conversation, but what was the general impetus for reviewing this now? Is this something that you review like in a regular way, or were there incidences that required a careful revision of the policies? Maybe it was already mentioned, but I was just curious to know just kind of what led to this great work of revising it.
We've essentially been working our way through all of our policies over the
Okay.
last, and since Richard and I both were in these roles. We started with a list. We had so many policies when I started, and we've been combining them, revising them, just going through. So we'd like to be, you know, every so often we are just looking at this because things do change, but there really wasn't anything big that led to, oh, we need to do this one right now. It's just, this is something we use, like I said, every day, like our collection policy. We want it to be really tight and strong, and for our staff to be able to use it efficiently.
Some policies you'll notice will get reviewed once a year, or every 2 years, or
Okay.
like the borrowing policy tends to be a policy that we regularly look at just to make sure it's fresh. The finance policy is looked at every 2 years. So if there's a schedule, some policies have a little longer life in them, you know, I would say, you know, and if there's not like a real big challenge or issue with one, then we might just put it on the back burner, high priority.
Right.
But I also just want to mention, I think I mentioned this a couple minutes ago, Laura in her role also is now overseeing safety.
Okay.
So, whereas the safety used to be under my umbrella, now it's under Laura. So this is a good time for Laura to work with our safety manager and assess things, have fresh eyes essentially. So, yeah.
We've also, things have changed over the years in terms of how big of a safety team we have. Safety used to be part of building services. They've gone off into their own department. So some of the ways we've approached this have changed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I had a couple of.
Sure.
Back to page 58. Just that in the paragraph underneath initial warning or exclusion, the sentence that says, unless the patron's misconduct involves actual or potential harm to another patron. I was just thinking to include the staff member in that as well.
Yeah, we can include that.
And then I did have on page 60, I have questions about the appeal procedure. So it says that they can make written requests to the library executive director within 10 days of the date of notice. Is that listed that they have 10 days on the actual notice?
I believe so. I can double check.
If not, I just was thinking that, and you don't have to check it right now, but
Okay.
if they,
Pretty sure.
don't,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
make sure. That was the question that
Yeah.
popped in my mind, that are they aware that they have 10 days?
The notice is very procedural, so it also outlines, when it's time for your reinstatement meeting, here's how you schedule that, and here's what that meeting will involve. So it's very procedural.
Okay, and then which leads me to, further down on that page, under the reentry meeting, that the request for a reentry meeting, the suspended patron should call the library, whereas before they could make it in writing a request. Does that mean that they can only call, or can they also have some sort of, like, what is calling the only way that they could be contacted to schedule a reentry? So just giving some other options.
Yeah.
You know,
We can broaden that.
whether it's written or a phone call.
You can say contact the safety manager.
Yeah.
I actually think, wouldn't it behoove us to, want to encourage people to do it in writing because you want to have documentation?
Well, this is just to schedule the meeting. We do get their signature on the appropriate use policy saying that they understand what happened at the meeting and what they need to do going forward. Most people do call us, but yeah, we can add other ways of contacting us. What we don't want is for them to just come in, especially repeatedly. Potentially the safety manager's not here, we want them to have an appointment to come in to have this meeting.
Given the nature of this whole thing, it seems to me you want to have all these steps, like you said, very formal process in writing, so that no one can say, well, I called many times and, then they weren't there when I showed up, because people, can get confused. And so if you have something in writing that they initiated, you can say, well, here's your email you sent us, right? And we were there and you weren't, and, something like that. So
I'm a little concerned about the requiring it in writing because for some, it may not be something that they can easily do.
a barrier.
Yeah, barrier. So, but our general philosophy on this stuff is to create a path back into reinstatement. We don't ban people for life here. We want to make it easy for them to call us, contact the safety manager, have a conversation. You know what I mean? So if we can leave it, if we can leave the contacting part as contact the safety manager. But I hear what you're saying in terms of when they have a meeting, as Laura mentioned, it's we ask them to clarify the understanding and then have a thing that they sign.
And generally, when we hand someone a suspension or mail it to them, we also include the card for our safety manager, so it has contact information on it.
And then for accessibility purposes, just thinking about like our patrons that don't speak English as their primary, language, for any of our multi-language, learners, that we have these forms available just in case, right? So I know that that's not something, just keeping in mind always, what are other ways that we can be looking at the way that we're communicating. I just would not want, as you said, we want people to be able to come back in and use the library appropriately. So just making sure that language barriers are not something that they're going to be tripped up on because they didn't make the appeal, if they didn't understand what the procedure was, or things like that.
Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, when our safety staff have an issue where they're talking to someone who may not be proficient in English, but they normally call someone on staff who you know, be there with them and
Yeah.
all, but.
great. We have,
So that's
yeah.
one thing, but.
We have information on the internet about which staff speak which languages, and we can use Vocera to call for a Spanish translator or a Russian translator. So I'm not saying there's always someone here who speaks every language that we need in the moment, but we are usually able to get to a place of communicating.
You know,
Yeah. Mhm.
I had a question. Like when I read about, like the initial warning and whatnot, it seems like the assumption is that the person is in the library committing the offense.
Mhm.
But if you look at the opening paragraph of the document, it talks about this applies to things like on library property as well as to online environments and phone calls. So what if the person is not in the library, but they're engaging in harassing behavior online or via the phone? How are those situations handled? And if you aren't
Mhm.
actually able to confront the person in person?
We have had cases where people have harassed staff over the
Yes.
phone. We have given our staff some tools as to how to end those conversations. They do
Okay.
not need to just sit there and listen endlessly. And then it's documented, the incident is documented, and our safety manager and the safety team follow up. And they will then reach out to the patron. You know, I'm the safety manager calling from the Skokie Library, had this concern, and see if they can have a dialogue that way. They don't necessarily have to be physically here for us to follow up and,
I see.
yeah.
Okay, because when I read it, it just seems like you get an initial verbal warning from the library staff, so that could either be in person or it could be
Yeah.
via the phone if they're
yes, we
doing
can
the
also warn
event.
you on the
Okay.
phone. If this behavior doesn't stop, I'm going to hang up.
Okay, I think that's important to understand because I just feel like with everything being, you know, shifting and more people engaging in harassing behavior online, I just want to make sure that the staff is fully equipped and comfortable to be able to handle those situations.
It's loss of privileges, library use privileges, in a broader sense, you know, it's not.
Yeah.
All strictly applying to, you can't come to the library, like you're not allowed to get like phone, information services over the phone. So, you know, if you're
Right.
suspended.
Mhm.
I imagine there's also circumstances where library staff is going to community events, for example, and you're not on library property, it may not be on the bookmobile, but you can still have some of this behavior happening.
Mhm.
You know, I just want to make sure everyone feels
Mhm.
comfortable with the policy and all the circumstances.
Mhm.
Other comments, suggestions? Let me ask, are you comfortable incorporating our suggestions? As in, should we vote on this tonight to approve it as amended, or do you want to play with it and bring it back to us before we vote on it?
Look at Richard for a second, but
Everything that I've heard is not, a large concern or anything. I think these are minor points and edits that will clarify things and make those changes.
you can imagine.
Yeah, and if the board, we'll share, obviously you'll get in your iPads, you know, we'll see it loaded, you know, the fresh, policy, you'll see it online actually, because these are public policies.
Yeah.
But we'll also let you know, like if when we review it with our attorney, with the wording, you know, if there's like a particular thing that we want to highlight for you of why we chose a certain word.
But
We can
yeah,
always
I'm
open it back
comfortable with
up
the
later, too.
suggestions that were made, so
Yeah.
So you're okay with us?
approving as amended.
As amended.
Mhm.
And it would get reviewed by legal once more after the changes
Mhm.
are made.
Let us know, yeah. And I wanted to add, actually, while we're talking about reviewing things, just FYI, these policies in the board packet are working documents, you know, so they're not like formatted exactly to, you know, conversion and so you might see like a scratched up words and stuff, you know, like because of the conversion between words.
Yeah.
Susie actually does a great job, like after the board meetings, when the board says, yes, it's good to go, she'll like reconstruct the policy basically from scratch and version of it, so.
Yeah, I know the red and blue was hard to read. Even I was getting a little.
It's actually very helpful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
It's nice to see the changes.
I'm glad it wasn't too confusing.
No, that was helpful.
Yeah.
That's why we also give you the clean version.
Yeah, it's a little easier to read.
Yeah.
All right, then can I get, since we talked about both of these already, so I'm going to combine these motions. Motion to approve revised appropriate library use policy and revised supervision of children policy as amended.
So moved. Second.
And then we do this by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, yeah. Really.
At page 69, approval of revised corporate credit card policy. Richard?
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward too. As I mentioned in the memo, the finance policy will be reviewed fully in November or towards the end of the year as per our schedule. But this particular section of the finance policy had a more pressing revision that we wanted to make, just kind of more practically speaking. The way it's worded currently, it's very definitive about who can have the credit cards, and that's not really working for us right now. And as I mentioned, also I wanted to open that up a little bit, and in the process of doing that, decided to make some more changes just to kind of make it extra clear about what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what the responsibility of the cardholder is. We cleaned up our employee acknowledgement, which I know the memo states that it's at the bottom of the policy, but it's actually a separate document, so we provided a copy here. So just revisions on that section. Nothing else is touched in the policy. It's all the larger policy. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
How many cardholders are there?
So currently we have myself, 2, 3, 4. And we're talking about adding one for IT, basically, and that, as I explained in my memo, that would just basically be a fund file. It's not like they would really go out and use it in a physical location. It's just more for all these online accounts. Our IT manager will sleep a little bit easily if he knows that we're not gonna have a gap in service because of the card issue. And then possibly talk about adding Laura, actually, because Laura is, I don't think I mentioned it, but it's okay if I mention it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Laura's running for PLA board this year. So I believe all the board members are members of PLA, so be sure to vote when the ballot opens up. And
March 11th.
She has a good chance of it. But I was saying that because Laura may also be traveling more for potential board role at PLA Board Library Association, I think it might make more sense, just convenience sake, to issue her a credit card for travel expenses. But like I said, the current policy is very prescriptive about who I can't be authorized. Well, I don't want to violate the policy, so here we go.
Any questions or comments about that policy proposal? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve revised corporate credit card policy as presented?
So, okay.
All in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very good. That gets us to page 73, update of anticipated capital projects.
This also just, there's no approval needed for this section of the discussion. It's just for information purposes. As I mentioned in the memo, we're always looking at possible expenditures for large capital projects, so building, IT, kind of things. That the board members who've been here a long time know that we do this every 6 months, February and August. And always lines up with once before the operating budget discussion and once before the tax levy discussion. So hopefully I think it's been helpful over the year for the board, and so we're continuing that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory with the chart on 74, or better spreadsheet on page 74. Most of everything on the fiscal year 2024 list, which is our current fiscal year, shouldn't be a surprise to the board. Most of that stuff is are the projects that the board approved at one point, so and are either completed or in motion and progress right now. For the next fiscal year, you have obviously the big project that's potentially, in our plans for the next fiscal year, the patio renovation. And then you have just as several other smaller scope projects. And then we're projecting 1 year further in fiscal year 2026. We have obviously lesser number of projects, but also the most significant one would be the replacement of the older windows on the main first floor. So just to explain, the first floor, the windows were not replaced in the renovation project because our construction manager and architect and engineers determined that we still have good life in them. There was no need to change those at that moment, and can always come back a few years later and change them. And all the windows on the second floor were up. But so that's something that is on our to-do list essentially. After the third floor renovation, Laura and Vinny, our building services manager, and I will work together to work with an engineering firm or construction firm to have another building review or capital asset study done. So we'll get an updated kind of picture from a professional on what is they're seeing or what work that we're potentially needing to plan for. But honestly, I mean, over the past years or so, we've knocked out a lot of work. For the building is in really good shape.
But what about the parking?
Parking lot, we paved and sealed, and restriped everything just a year and a half ago. That was the one where it was a joint project with the village and we saved a lot. Yeah, seal coating is recommended usually by most companies every 2 to 3 years. So we can either do it this year or next year, but we haven't put a figure on that yet for last year. But we'll do it.
And any questions about the anticipated capital project? Okay, we don't need to vote on that. Let's move on then to the projected 24-25 budget.
This is also obviously, as I mentioned, there's no decision needed at this point. This is the first draft and projected budget. In March, you'll get another version of this, just an update. There may not be significant changes, and in April, you'll get the final version, hopefully for to your satisfaction and approval. So we can start the year with an approved budget. But if there are any questions, please let me know. I tried in my memo to really break down every component of our revenue stream and also our expected utilization of existing funds and new revenue coming through different categories like personnel and patron resources, operations, building, professional management, etc. Hopefully it's clear. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or in the subsequent months.
We had a couple of questions already, but here and there, like, you guys want to figure and stuff you had or have an answer? Good question.
I think the only area I was slightly concerned about, I was just looking at where we're tracking with this year's budget. We always seem to under budget for maintenance. That's just the one area I'm a little bit concerned about. So maybe just talk through that a little bit more and how you put together that projection for that. Like maybe because we've done so much maintenance work, maybe it will be fine, but then I keep thinking costs to repair things continue to go up. So I just want to make sure that we're comfortable with where you're going with that number.
Absolutely. I totally understand the concern. We're concerned with that number as well all the time. And the honest answer is that it's really difficult to land on that number in a precise way because the nature of building issues is they're unexpected. Like the capital projects are one thing, and that's what we're planning for. We know that we're going to take care of that. So that's easier, but the unexpected things are what really throws the spending off sometimes with the building. So the building budget line has, aside from janitorial supplies, which is a separate line, there's the buildings and grounds budget. And that is comprised of some reoccurring fees, so like our preventative maintenance fees from our HVAC company, or maintenance of our fish tank, for example, like that kind of thing. But then the other part of the budget is a guesstimate, of what we might need for repair. So these past 2 years, what really threw our budget over by a certain percentage are the plumbing issues. So, and we're still experiencing. You see in the disbursements from January, we had some backups on the second floor bathrooms, and Laura is overseeing buildings and building services now, and he's regularly been.
Every day.
They have a plan she just shared with me today of we have a pretty solid understanding now of the second floor piping situation. Laura even drew me a diagram. So the toilets is serious. But we think that we have a solution to that. So, but we will do the work and we'll hope for the best. And then this is an old building, so things may come up, but that's why we also have like the contingency built into, and that's also why we save set aside money in our reserves for like a rainy day type thing. I hear you.
It's like every month I always, that's where my eye always goes every month about how much we've allocated and where we're spending against it. And that's the one where we are always like, it's always tight or we seem to under, but to your point, we don't know that these things are going to happen.
It's virtually impossible, honestly. The cost of cleaning supplies and equipment and like kind of large commercial vacuum cleaners, that's always when it breaks, it's also kind of like unpredictable, because with that kind of stuff, you think that you have another year of life, but then maybe a piece breaks and you have to replace it. But I will say that Vinny and Laura have done a great job this year of really having an analysis and detailed, a thorough approach to breaking down all the elements. They looked at this past year's spending and really like kind of analyze what you can expect next year. But also at the end of the day, like I said, it's unpredictable.
Okay. And then the other one I'll mention is I'm not saying we should take something away and reallocate money. I think it's just something we should consider as we look at the 3-year strategy, as we're continuing to try to reach out to people where they are. And we're trying to reach people who haven't been at the library before, or we're trying to bring patrons back, maybe haven't been here for a while. I do think marketing and publicity is something that is really important. And I think our team does a fantastic job with the social media channels that we have now, with our fantastic printed brochure. Having worked in marketing for close to, I know that there's other things we could be doing, but I also know we are limited with the budget that we have. So I just think it's something to consider as we plan for the next 3 years. And if that is one of our strategic pillars that we're trying to benchmark against, just making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success in that area. Because that is hard to reach people without having the resources to go out and effectively get to them, So it's just something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'll just add that I totally hear you, and we've had a lot of conversations with our communications and multimedia engagement manager, Jane Hanna, about that topic. We've talked about, the role of the print newsletter that goes to every Skokie household, how we continue to get feedback from our patrons about how great that is and how they rely on that, and it's also very expensive way of telling people about what we do. So we're exploring how to make use of the dollars that we have, but also trying to think about increasing the budget. We have increased the budget for that line over the years as well. So we're not holding steady or anything. We have increased it, but
you're proposing increasing the printing line 14.8%. For a total of 128,000. Do we bid that out?
We work with a kind of like I think that, I don't know if they would call themselves that, but like kind of like a broker type person who works on getting the lowest cost, good, printing costs for us. And she knows we worked with her a long time and, she knows like what we're looking for, the quality we're looking for. And so she's constantly getting us good pricing, but the cost of paper even is expensive, you know, and it's rising. And so I know that our CME manager recently met with her to talk about changing the type of paper that we use so that we reduce costs. But I mean, it is like, you know, it's kind of like but it's kind of a problem that we create ourselves because of our own success, because we do so much here and the programs that we do and the services that we offer. We can't do like a 6-page newsletter, you know what I mean? Like we can't do a flyer that tries to tell everyone about everything, you know, like we have to have these 16-page issues because there's so much to share, you know, with our community. So, but our staff are constantly thinking about this. And I will also say that we've always found a way. So if like Jane and her staff want to do some kind of postcard promotion or a cool summer reading piece or whatever, we always find the money to do it, you know, and again, that's why we also have a contingency in mind too for things that might go over or are unexpected, you know, but yeah, it's one of the growing costs, you know.
Do you remember when we talked about, Bookmark having do you remember we spoke one time, I think it was like a year or two ago, it was about a Bookmark having a scan code?
Get QR code?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would just give the updated info, whatever.
Yeah, we do some of that stuff too, but we've heard from our patrons that they love just flipping through this in their hands. And I don't know.
Not to replace.
Oh, okay. In addition, yeah.
Like an
yeah.
inexpensive supplement to still grow reach, yeah.
Sure, yeah, we can definitely do part of it.
I'd be
We have to try different strategies, yeah. We're at a point with that stuff that we have to kind of explore different options, and Jane and I have already talked about that.
Because I know I get the Parks Department one too. I mean, it could even be worth talking to other agencies within the city to see, I mean, their print paper, I will say, it's not as nice. And I know that they've switched tactics too. Like if you look at theirs, it's way more QR codes because it links to the much bigger catalog online too. So I think they're saving money by not using as many pages, by linking to the full catalog online, but having a smaller. So I don't know, just different ways to think about it, I guess. So I agree. I like this. I'm just thinking, are there other ways we can reach other people who may not be looking at this as much, but might be getting their information in another way?
Yeah, I agree. And one of the interesting things about this budget this year is looking at, for example, our programming line where we have a proposed budget of 154K and our publicity line at 128K. Like the thought of that being inverted and like spending more money on publicizing than what we spend on the actual doing of the services, it feels not right to me. You know?
No, I can see that.
So we're trying to strike a balance, knowing that book printing and publicity is extremely important, and we don't want to like just kind of throw all our money at that and like take away from salaries, from programming, from maintaining the building. You know what I mean? So it's a balancing act. Yeah.
I guess I was thinking more things like too, like once we understand more about the demographic, getting certain things translated in more languages, like that could be part of, you know, the advertise. So there's just a lot of different components.
Yeah, and the strategic priorities that we have right now, part of that printing and publicity budget accounts for kind of an unknown. Part of this is that as we continue to work on our current priorities, like reaching, accounting for like Skokie's language dynamics and diversity, we need to like be able to have some money reserved to do whatever we create, which we don't know what that is right now, you know, so there's a little bit of accounting for the unknown, so.
That's my only comment.
Yeah, that's one of our,
Sorry.
no, that's one of our tougher, lines, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So speaking of which, when we talk about kind of, you know, how our budget reflects our strategic plan, right? And thinking about, you know, to your point about putting things in multiple languages and things like that. When we talk about our continuing ed for our staff members and for our staff days and things like that, what budget line was that?
Continuing education and memberships, the fifth line down.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, and I'm also kind of, it's all kind of coming together with like the acceptable, you know, use policies and things like that. Is like what kind of education that we're giving our staff members about the different cultures, right? About, you know, the way that we interact with our staff members of different cultures and how we can be respecting their cultures and things that, you know, so I'm trying to think of where we could be aligning those types of, you know, how we interact with our community and what we're doing to educate them so they feel well prepared to interact, right? Because if we're talking about, you know, our staff members, for example, interacting with children that are unsupervised and what are the cultural norms for, you know, certain families, right? And how we might approach a situation like that, whether it be the parent or the caregiver, you know, how are we supporting our staff so that they can enter into a situation that might be possibly, might cause conflict, right? So I'm thinking about that and how we can be relaying that into our budget line. So just something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with everything we said, and I think we can be doing more along those lines as well. This past year, we hired a training and development administrator or coordinator, so that's their job, you know, it's like we have an entire position dedicated to managing that. But it's also every manager, supervisor's job to find those opportunities and think about how to equip our staff. So that CE, continuing education line, is a very strong number. Like if you look at other libraries, this is a very, very solid, strong number for dedicated to conference attendance, workshops, webinars, speakers brought in, you know, any kind of resource that. So the only reason that there's a decrease reflected on the projected budget for that line this next year is almost strictly because the PLA National Conference is every 2 years. And so that's a huge expense for us because we send, you know, upwards of 15 people a month. And so when we don't have to do that in a fiscal year, we can drop it down and the next year after that, we'll bring it back up. And then it's kind of like there's a rhythm to that. So that's the only reason, but that's still a very strong number. We're not in no way deprioritizing continuing education. And the third floor, as you know, when we visited that, the former boardroom is going to be turned into this space for a lot of that work to happen in a stronger fashion. It's a dedicated employee learning resource commons.
That line also includes the membership, so both the personal and institutional memberships. So through that, staff can also, they get mailings and they get professional development opportunities and networking opportunities. So that's another way that we're trying to support the training and development.
One line that struck me as inflated, although it's a small amount, but it's the maintenance of auto equipment. Whereas last year you budgeted 20,000 and we only spent 6,800. So this year you kept it steady at 20,000. And it looks like from our financials, we've only spent 1,500 this year,
Yeah,
and you're proposing a 10% increase in that line. We haven't
yeah,
spent anywhere near
yeah.
allotment, so 10% bumps.
Yeah, I can explain that. That's similar, to the, buildings and grounds budget. It's like the, just in case this happens kind of a line, you know, so the bookmobile is, getting older. You know, so we, purchased it and had it customized, in 2016. We got it delivered, so that's already, you know, almost 8 years. It's 8 years. So that's when we start seeing some major issues potentially. So maybe we might not move that line, but we wanted to not be kind of put in a situation where we drop that line way down and then have what could be reasonably expected, you know, like a generator or a battery issue or some major issue. So there's no like immediate concern or it's getting to that age. So it's more of a safeguard. But we can adjust that too if the board would like a little bit.
It's not a major number. But
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Other questions or comments? We don't need to vote on this.
Actually, though, relating to what Jean just said and going back to the topic that was just before this one, where we talk about the capital improvement, like, is the bookmobile included in the capital improvement schedule or no? I don't see.
If we bought a new one, it would be, but
Okay.
the repairs, we
Okay.
don't include in.
And how often is that bookmobile typically replaced?
The lifespan of a bookmobile is about 18 years.
18 years,
So,
okay.
it's like maybe near its halfway,
Okay.
you know, but it really depends on how you take care of a vehicle and how you take care of a bookmobile. Like I said, our staff do a great job. They have an entire maintenance scheduling system that regularly like monitoring and taking care of any issues that come up. We take it off the road if we have any concerns. So we're keeping it up well, I would say. So I hope we get a lot more like that.
Any other questions, comments? On the proposed budget?
I guess I just want to know what the next steps are. So we're seeing this prelim here, like what is the next step that you would
Great
take?
question. So in March, so please feel free to contact me between board meetings. Individually, of course, no, we can't gather, but individually you contact me if you have a thought or question, comment about one of the budget lines or revenue streams. I'll try to answer and address those as much as I can. In March, what we're planning to do is we'll provide some type of discussion starter and recommendation about potential increases for the non-union staff, because as just to remind you, the CBA has already built into it a 3-year increase schedule for union staff. So we put the non-union staff, the board would still need to have a discussion if it would like, and that normally happens in March. So so that's the plan. Jim and I are in conversation about that too, obviously. So if that changes, it changes, but and then if the board approves something along in that area, in which then we'll factor those numbers back into the final budget proposal delivered in April. And that's when you might see the salary line adjusted based on what the figures are in March, where the board lands on that discussion. Sometimes in past years, the board has done all of that at once in April, because they might want an extra month to deliberate about the increased question, you know, but it's helpful to have that 1 month before so that we can prepare everything.
We're a May 1 fiscal year, so we'll see a draft in March. Approve it in April, start in May.
Okay.
Right.
Which is, unfortunately, is not in sync with the tax increase. What is that, one is that, the timing on that?
Which increase?
The tax roll.
The levy?
Kept it at 0% tax increase.
Oh, the tax levy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tax levy discussion is always in August, September, because the village, sees that, takes that ordinance to their, the village trustees in, November, December.
So you get it out of sync, we're talking about taxes in August and September.
You don't know what's going to
We're doing
happen,
the
yeah.
Budget in March and April, so it's always a mismatch.
Right.
I'm clear now. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood,
Yeah.
like what we're looking at today versus, okay.
It's a good question.
And they aren't in sync in terms of the tax of the budget, so it's.
And even now when we're receiving the tax revenues, right?
Yeah.
But so, I mean, everything is out of whack, so, and it always is.
And that's true every.
Illinois. It's, to come.
Everybody's got different fiscal years. Feds are October and the state is July and we're May and.
Some government units are calendar year fiscal, some are.
I think Cook County is December.
It's all different.
Yes.
Yes. Historically, I don't know how that happens.
All right, that brings us to comments from trustees. What do you gotta say?
I had a question with these handy dandy little things that we distribute. I just would like clarity. Are these flyers that are in the library for distribution? Do you give them out to people?
Yeah, or
What's the
we
scoop on
sometimes
these?
are so these are honestly, extra copies of what we gave the clergy forum members.
Oh, okay.
So when we met with them, we gave them some materials. And that's typically what, obviously this, goes to every household. The rest of these are flyers and materials that we often bring out into community events. So,
Okay.
like to school visits or like if we're at the Festival of Cultures or that kind of thing, we'll have, materials. And some of these like, local community food resources, that's a good example of something that we hand out to patrons. Our safety staff might hand this out if they are interacting with someone and they sense that perhaps they'd be interested in this.
Is that on the website too?
I believe all this is, I have to double check, but a lot of times it's easier to, if it was on the website, we would often have to print it for people and hand it to them. So it's nice to have.
That's
a clean
excellent, yeah.
copy. What else? Yeah, so this is just something we would often bring to like a community event, or we have these at the youth desk as well. Same thing with all these two. The bookmobile schedule we have obviously, all about the library, so.
I think these look really nice, like they're really
Yeah,
graphic,
they're
they're
nice, yeah.
splashy. They can even make really just great social media posts too, just to provide general information, get a lot of use out of them, so
Yeah.
I like them.
I wonder
Thank you.
too if this in particular caught my eye. I know many of us are tracking the increased number of new arrivals, not just in Chicago, but in the suburbs and the recent crisis of buses dropping people off directly in the suburbs. And this information is so key always, but especially right now. And I'm just wondering, I don't know, like where else, how else we can put this like in the newsletter, like to make it not just for people in need, but people who are also assisting people in need, right? There's huge mutual aid coordinating going on in the city. And then there's also a meeting in Wilmette on February 27th on Tuesday to talk about neighbors in the North Shore area being able to be more responsive to the increase in numbers that we're seeing, not just in Chicago, but really at our doorstep in the North Shore. So I wasn't prepared to like talk about it now, but I'm seeing this and just thinking like, how do we make sure not just that people who we perceive as being in need get this, but anyone who's in a position to help has this. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I plan to go to this meeting on the 27th, just on my own, but I could also bring this kind of material there.
And let me know if you need copies of a particular, resource or something, we can definitely provide that for you.
Okay,
I'd love to hear more about that meeting too. It might be on our radar, but I'm not sure.
okay, yeah.
What I thought about also with your company, I mentioned in my director's report that I reached out to the new directors of other libraries.
Yeah.
In the area, and, you know, I regularly meet with other public library directors as well as like obviously community partner members, but that might be something, a discussion of like our regional libraries, so like coming together, like putting our resources like this together so that we can share it easily.
Yes,
Yeah, so it's not just scope.
yeah, that we hear of these satellite places within this region where people can go and get information or to link up with a greater, I love that idea.
Yeah, well, but let me know if you, and that goes for any board member, if you're out in the community or attending an event and you want something, you can easily produce some copies. A lot of this, the one-sheeters here are things that we have the capability of printing in-house. That's why we have a copy of that costs that much, you know, so we can do that kind of thing. But obviously then the big newsletters, we always have some extra copies of this too for the inside the building. And if you ever want to take a stack of these to an event or whatever, just let us know. We can provide that for you. Yeah. Yes.
Other comments from the board? Or staff for them? Yes?
I'd like to circle back to the balance sheet question regarding other revenue. So I was able to pull up, something that other revenue, about 24,000 is from our copy sheet. So, we get another copy.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking that question, because if we start to see increases in some things, does it point to a bigger need? Does it point to how people are using the library? So.
Yeah, that's incredible. A lot of that also just pays for our bills for the related to the copy.
Yes.
So,
I wonder how much it costs.
no, we're not like generating a lot of money or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just like it pays for itself.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Toner.
I think that's interesting, though. It's a lot of copies that people are doing.
Well, like copying.
We do offer some other options too. We have scanning services. You can scan and then have it as a file. You don't necessarily have to pay the 10 cents too.
Well, I use it because I mean, people don't like to have printers at home anymore. It's so easy
Yeah.
just to use the library system. You can upload it when you're at home and then swing by the library and literally just click print and then it's here. I mean, it's really, really great. I love it. I don't want to deal with toner cartridges at home. Pretty great. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Anybody else? Colleagues? Jerry, good? Okay, then motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll get to the end of the